Hey everyone, welcome into another edition of Sal's House. Now, typically, like to get people to my house, but sometimes that's just not possible, especially with my guy who's important enough to talk during this particular week, former Buffalo Bills center, and of course, current radio analyst on the Buffalo Bills radio network, my friend Eric Wood, who joins me here on the podcast. So, Eric, welcome into the show. Welcome into Sal's house. I know you're not here, but we'll talk this way, and you're at your house, I'm at my house. It's all good, buddy.
It is all good. I wish we could have made it happen. At some point, we will get it live in person at your house, but we'll do it this way. This is much easier. I wouldn't want Sal's house and the production team to have to pay for my flight up there and then fly me down to Miami this week.
Well, let's just hope that the Bills have a few more home games and maybe we can make something happen here because they're actually obviously on the precipice of possibly having that happen. We'll get into that in just a second. First of all, did you have a good Christmas? I mean, you have young kids. I have a 10-year-old. What's it like around the Wood household on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day?
Yeah, our kids are almost 6. That's Garrett, and Grace is 8 years old. So they're at a special age. They're still believers in Santa Claus. So it's still a magical time. Prior to the LA game, we took the kids out to Disneyland. That was me and Leslie's big gift to the kids. And then Christmas morning was a ton of fun. Got to have family around. Last year on Christmas Eve, I was driving back through that blizzard. Luckily, I got out of Chicago. I know you guys didn't, so I'm not going to complain too much about it. But Leslie really had to man the ship at home last year, considering I didn't get home till after midnight on Christmas Eve, and there's only so much you can do to prep for Santa Claus coming in the morning. So this was a little bit easier of a Christmas this year.
Yeah, I was glad that the Bills, played on the 23rd to allow us to get back, even though, I mean, I walked in the house at 7 a.m. Christmas Eve morning. But Eric, I was thinking about like Patriots played late Christmas Eve night. I'm like, man, they're not getting home from Denver until after Santa Claus arrives, basically, right? So we were a bit lucky the way the schedule fell this year, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And look, as a player, a coach, when you cover this game, when you cover football, you understand that Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's are likely going to be jacked up. And it is what it is. You get used to it. And then you just get lucky sometimes, that when, the Bills don't have a Thanksgiving game, Christmas falls midweek. And if Christmas falls midweek, then that generally means New Year's Day, that'd be a week later. Then it's a little
Yep.
easier those years. But these last couple years, obviously dicey with the Bills schedule.
All right. One final thought on Christmas. And one thing I got to ask you, what was your kid's favorite gift from either Santa or you or somebody, even if you didn't think it would be their favorite gift?
So Garrett, we got him football cards for the first time, and he's getting really into it. He's got a lot of
Love
my
it.
brain. I grew up memorizing the back of baseball cards and pulling
Yes.
out the sports page every morning, and it was stats and it was rankings and it was um, records. And the funny thing is he's grasping it now, but he can't quite get that there's not a ranking system in the NFL like there is in college football or college basketball. Like, well, what's their ranking? I'm like, well, they're first in the AFC East, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're the top C. He's getting all of that. But we watched an Eagles game on Christmas Day, and one of the cards he got 36 cards, and he looked at them and we put them in his binder, and DeAndre Swift gets a carry and he goes, I have his card. And so he's definitely getting into it. And, same day, I was impressed by that. I'm impressed by the little things. My daughter, she got another one of the American Girl dolls, and she's been into that. And I would say that's probably her top gift.
Max is starting ice hockey this week, actually, that we talk. And he's really jacked. So he actually got synthetic ice. Have you seen this stuff yet? Like we're
No.
skating inside the house. He has his ice skates on in his playroom on carpet, skating on synthetic ice. It's incredible. Now, it's not cheap. These panels, you put them together. But Eric, they're the easiest things. You just literally click them together and it's ice inside your house. It's incredible.
That's wild. We've gotten into some like a casual ice skating around the holidays down here. Just go to like a little Christmas themed spot. I don't know that we're going to dedicate a part in the house to it. Ice hockey is not big down here. I would love my kids, especially my son, to get into ice hockey, but because I got into it when I was playing up in Buffalo. But yeah, I don't like our chances down here.
Well, listen, it is ice hockey season, which means it is playoff season, and the Bills are fighting for the playoffs. I want to rewind back. You were part of the team that broke the drought, obviously, famously, New Year's Eve night in Miami. The Bills are going to Miami this year to try and make sure they get into the playoffs this year. Take me back to the week leading up to the game. Now, granted, we know 17 years without the playoffs versus this team that's perennially in the playoffs. I get all of that. But what was that preparation? What was the talk in the locker room, especially amongst the veterans?
Yeah, I mean, it's simply let's go take care of business and let the chips fall how they may. There was three different games that we either needed to go correctly or simply get the win down in Miami, and then Cincinnati win against Baltimore. Baltimore was fighting for their playoff chances too. If they win, they're in. And still to this day, I can't believe the Andy Dalton, Tyler Boyd connection to send us to the playoffs. But it's business as usual. It's prep for one more and hope that you get another game. But all we can control, the way the seasons fell, the way we've kind of made the bed that we got to lay in, all we can worry about is going down and winning at Miami. And so that week, I believe LaShawn McCoy missed that game. And so we had Mike Gillislee, I believe, and then we had this little bitty running back, and I'm brain farting on it.
Tavares? I'm sorry. Was it not Tavares? What was his name? That was the quarterback. Oh gosh, no, I can't think of his name. It's like a military type sounding name, and I can't think of his name. But go ahead. I'll try and look it up.
You look it up, and I'll keep talking and try and get us to that point. So, but regardless, I don't believe Shady was able to play in that game. Either did an ankle or a hamstring, and so we knew we were maybe undermanned. He was probably the best player, especially at the skill positions on our team. But hey, we got enough to get it done, and that was our mindset heading into that game. Fun game. Kyle Williams gets a touchdown in that game. We hand him a ball on the goal line, and actually the defensive tackles ran an out stunt, which is the worst thing they could possibly do against Kyle Williams running it in as a fullback. So I completely whiff on the play because my guy goes out, but that means that the hole's going to be completely wide open. Everyone thought we rehearsed that touchdown dance where Kyle got us all in a circle and threw the ball up in the air, and then we all fell on the ground like it was a grenade or something, and completely unrehearsed. Kyle's just like, hey, come here. We all kind of got the gist of what he wanted to get done. And so we had some fun with that one. And similar to the Bills game last week, the scores were not up in the stadium. And so we weren't sure how the games were playing out. It was unlikely that, all three of those games that we needed to happen would all help us out. And so really we were just pulling for the Bengals to pull that one off. And obviously they did in the locker room. What's the name? I know you got it.
Well, I do. I was half right and wrong. Travaris Cadet was the guy I was thinking of, but that wasn't him. I said Cadet like a military name. He was on the team, but that wasn't him. Shady played that game, but he probably shouldn't have. Remember, he was dealing with an ankle injury, 11 carries for 10 yards. The two guys who led the team in rushing that day, Marcus Murphy and Mike Tolbert.
Yes. Okay. Marcus Murphy. That was who it was. Yes. Yeah. Gillislee didn't get carries in that game. That was right. Greg Roman Rex time. Yeah. Yeah. You got it. It was little Murph. Right. That's what I was thinking of.
And of course, Kyle Williams with the 1 yard touchdown. Okay. So during the game, I remember that I'm behind the bench and you guys were getting shout outs from the crowd, the Bills crowd. Hey, this is what's going on in the Bengals game. This is what's going on in this game. It was kind of wild. And it reminded me of this week, even Sean decided, he says it was an organizational decision. I'm guessing it was his decision. I don't know, to not have the score of the Dolphins Ravens game this past week inside the stadium during the game, which I thought was interesting.
It is interesting. And I get it. Look, Sean is conservative, he's structured, and that's just on par with what you expect from him. It's not like the guys would have expected Sean to make a different decision in that moment. Sean wants them to be completely focused on getting a win against the Patriots, and if you get that win, yes, you hope that you're playing for the division this week, but you're still putting yourself at a really good chance to make the playoffs. And their mindset, with 5 games to go, was we likely need to win out to make the playoffs. That's where the talk of 1-0 this week, survive in advance. That's our only concern right now. And the Bills have won 4 in a row. Has it been pretty the whole time? No, but good teams find ways to win these games. And so, they put themselves in a great position. The one that surprised me through this run, when you look at, teams we needed to lose, was the Tennessee Dolphins game. I mean, the Dolphins get up 2 scores late in that game, and you just think it's over. I was actually on a golf trip watching that out to eat with some buddies and just assumed that game was over. And then all of a sudden Tennessee climbs back and win that one. And we're like, ooh, we got a chance here. And man, as you looked at it, Dallas had a great chance of beating Miami. Yep. And then obviously Baltimore smokes them. And Miami's dealing with a ton of injuries right now. I believe that's why you're seeing, even with the Bills traveling down to Miami, that the Bills are a favorite in this game because they've been ravaged by injuries. Now the Bills, no one's feeling sorry for the Dolphins in this situation with the amount of injuries that the Bills dealt with, especially on the defensive side of the football early in this year, that led to, I believe, a big reason for that lull that they hit mid-year, where it was win a game, win a game, lose two in a row. And so no one's feeling sorry for the Dolphins in this situation, but they're going to be undermanned this week.
Eric, take me into preparation through a week when you know the other team has injuries. All right. Now, of course, you still have to do your own thing, but I'm always curious. I think fans are, how much do you focus on as a team, as a group? Hey, this guy's out. So let's attack there. Look at this, like the individual guy who's filling in for him, just the scheme in general, how that might be impacted. No Bradley Chubb, no Jalen Phillips, no Xavier Howard. From an offensive player standpoint, a center, a guy who makes calls. What's the talk throughout the week knowing that?
Yeah, so then you look at their personnel and okay, Christian Wilkins, likely their best, pass rusher up front. So how many times can we slide the line to him, get a 3-on-2 with the two defensive linemen on that side of the ball? Andrew Van Ginkel's probably their next best edge rusher there. And so you're being cognizant of him. And so look, as Joe Brady's prepping for this week and the entire offense, you're always looking for mismatches. You're looking for advantages that you could take on a defense. The way the salary cap is in the NFL, there's not going to be all top tier, all pro players at every position. So where are we going to be able to find weaknesses? And when you have Jalen Ramsey on one side of the field, and look, he makes some splash plays, but he's far from perfect out there on the edge at corner. But you're likely going to go after Eli Apple, who struggled last week when he came in the game. And so you're always looking to attack mismatches. And look, I mean, teams were doing that against the Bills. As soon as Matt Milano went out for the season, it was, where's Terrell Dotson? How can we attack him? And look, he's gotten better and better as the season has gone on. Sean McDermott has taken him off the field in obvious pass situations, put that dime defense in at times with Poyer at linebacker to protect him. But, that's what every team in the NFL is doing, is just looking for those mismatches.
Eric Wood here in Sal's house. Of course, Eric on the call on Sunday night on the WGR Sports Radio 550 and the Buffalo Bills Radio Network. I'll be on the sidelines. Chris Brown calling the play-by-play. It's the last game of the NFL season. It all comes down to this for the Buffalo Bills. Isn't it wild they can get the 2 seed versus being out of the playoffs? But of course, that depends on what happens Saturday night with the Steelers and Ravens, what happens Sunday with the Jaguars and Titans. Steelers, Ravens, I've been monitoring here the last couple of days, and we'll know more when people hear this, maybe what John Harbaugh is going to do. But they're going to have to decide, the Ravens, if they want to play their starters. Now, there's a double-edged sword, right, Eric? Because if you do play your starters, obviously there's a risk of getting hurt. If you rest them, they wouldn't play for 3 weeks, which is kind of tough to think that they'd be sharp as heck when they come back to play.
Yeah, so my philosophy on this is, if you have the option to rest guys and physically not put them at any risk, get them to get their body fully back. Now, you can control in a practice setting that if they do rest their starters, which I believe they'll do this week, I would expect them to have a lot of 1-versus-1s in practice. They're going to go starters versus starters, and it might not be in pads. And they're going to be able to control it, though. No one's going to be touching Lamar. No one's touching these receivers or tight ends or running backs. There's not going to be a ton of contact up front, but get as close to full speed reps as you can to keep them sharp in this situation. But if you can mentally let your guys not have to game plan for a week, not have to amp themselves up for a game, if you can obviously let them not take a physical toll, you have to take it. And even if that in that second week of the playoffs, when they'll be getting their first game, even if it takes you a few plays to kind of get back in a rhythm, heck, if it took you a couple series to get in a rhythm offensively, let's say, that's worth it to not have any risk of injury. I mean, and the Ravens have had injuries this year as well that they've had to deal with. Kyle Hamilton's dealing with an injury right now. I believe Marlon Humphrey's been dealing with an injury. They lose Mark Andrews for this. I mean, they've had a number of injuries. Running back, they've had so many injuries this year that, to be able to not risk it at all, I believe is the right play. Now, when I was playing in the AFC, the only team that really had a chance to do that each and every year was the Patriots, as they ran away with the AFC East and generally got that first round bye. They would generally play their starters for a half in that last game, but it'd be such a vanilla game plan. They're running the football a lot. Tom Brady's not going to take any shots in that, at the time, week 17 game, when there were 16 games. And so it's like, okay, I'm sure Tom was probably in on that decision as well. But as I'm looking at that, I'm like, how much am I gaining by prepping for this game. I got to fully game plan here. I got to get myself completely ready. I don't know how much you gain in that situation, but Tom Brady, on the other hand, is just so structured. He plans out his whole entire year to be peaking at the Super Bowl. So I'm assuming in his mind, in some way or somehow, it was important for him to be out there for a half.
Yeah, and look, John Harbaugh made a really good point at his press conference yesterday, which was in the preseason, you have so many more guys. There's still going to be guys who play. There's still got to be starters who play. The numbers just simply say you can't rest everybody, Eric. So that being said, the guys who are out there, I mean, they got to go full speed. As you know, I mean, you've played football at the highest of levels. You can't go not full speed. That's when you risk injury. So the Ravens have a shot no matter who they play here against a Steelers team that I don't think any of us think is world beaters, but they're fighting for their lives. But the Ravens have a shot no matter who's on the field.
I think they have as good of a shot to win. I think it should be about an even spread. I know the Steelers are favored at this point, but I think it should be about even. And here's a couple reasons why. One, I don't expect Lamar Jackson to play in this game and a couple of their top tier guys, but you're going to have a number of starters. Those guys that are filling in, let's call it a Tyler Huntley. He's going to get the full game plan this week. So when he's filled in the past, the game plan's been for Lamar Jackson. I understand they have similar skill sets, but not identical skill sets. So you have Tyler Huntley, who's playing for future contracts. He's playing for an opportunity maybe to start for another team in a year or two. And so you have a number of guys that are filling in that also don't have the wear and tear on their bodies that most of these guys do for, let's say, the Steelers, who they're playing against. And so, you have fresh legs. You have guys that are hungry to go continue to earn a spot on the Ravens, right, or go out and earn a contract, earn a spot on another team, earn a starting spot. If the Ravens continue winning in the playoffs, teams love cherry picking guys off of rosters that go win games. My buddy Breno Giacomini, perfect example, and he'll always tell you, he goes, no, he's Brazilian. He's Italian and Brazilian. He said, no, the Jets overpaid me because we won a Super Bowl. I started for 2 years and they give me a $20 million contract because I was on the Super Bowl winning team and I started. Wow. I didn't necessarily deserve that contract, but we won a Super Bowl in Seattle and they came and took me. And so these guys are going to be going all out, and you have a division rival, division bitter. That AFC North, they just love beating up on each other. It'll be a chippy game like it always is. And it's not going to surprise me if the Ravens win that game.
Our buddy from WIVB TV Channel 4, Josh Reed, made a point, and Josh isn't here to defend himself, but I'll disagree with him. And tell me what you think about this point, though. He said, the Ravens also probably don't want to see the Bills in the playoffs, so maybe they kind of lay back a little bit. I don't think so. I think what you said is right. You still have a chance to keep your division and arch rival out. Heck with the Bills. Let them, they got to go through a number of steps anyway. To me, there'd be nothing better than those guys to spoil the Steelers season.
Yeah, and Steve Bisciotti and the guys in the front office could want the Bills not to be in the playoffs, but the guys out there on the field are not going to lay down. I mean, there's no way that they're going to go out and intentionally put bad film and risk their career to make the Bills not enter the playoffs. And look, we know how hot the Bills are right now, and the people in the front office for the Ravens, I'm sure, do as well. And they're one of the most feared teams in the AFC right now, but those guys on the Ravens, they're not watching Bills film each and every week, sitting there going, oh man, if I'm playing anyone, I don't want to play the Bills right now. They're looking at them with a 10-6 record. Heck, Miami, I feel like, gets most of the show anyways, based upon Hard Knocks and Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill and this high-flying offense.
Let's bring it back to the Bills. Of course, Sunday night, a big one against the Miami Dolphins in South Florida. The most concern I've been fielding from fans, and I'm sure you have as well, is with the passing game, and specifically Josh Allen. Now, I actually think Josh was maybe more off in the Chargers game. This seemed like more of the entire package was off as far as the passing game and some of the things the Patriots are doing. But it hasn't been the cleanest game for Josh, and it has the last couple of weeks. What do you think's been going on with the passing game in general with the Bills the last 2 weeks?
It's a lack of execution. And when I say that, there's been misfires by Josh. There's been drops. There's been lack of separation. There's been pass protection breakdowns. There's been times where they run screens and the blocking's not executing out in front of it. And you combine all that and you have 2 lackluster performances in the pass game. And I don't know what's going on with Diggs. And I watched Joe Brady in his press conference yesterday navigate questions and really just say, there's times that we don't want him on the field because we want him to get a breather and have a break. But to me, to not have him on the field for the first 6 plays of the second half where the Bills drive down and score a touchdown and he's not on the field, to me, I don't know. It just feels like there's something going on. And maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe there's absolutely nothing going on there. But, the production just hasn't been there. First 9 games of the year, 7 touchdowns for Diggs, 92 yards a game, 11.9 per catch. The last 7, just 1 touchdown, 37 yards a game, and only 8.7 per catch. And so the production's down. Joe Brady's taking all the heat. I respect him as an offensive coordinator. I think he does a great job in the press conferences as well. And maybe this will come with time, but I just feel like Joe Brady is never condescending to someone asking a question, which I appreciate. I feel like, that's part of your job to answer questions from the media. And you may not appreciate the question or not think it's a great question, but I think he does a great job of respecting everyone and giving you a little bit of substance, even if it's not, something you can necessarily write a story about. But I was looking up stats this morning, and in Josh Allen's last 4 games, when he's not under pressure, his completion percentage is last in the NFL and his passer ratings last in the NFL. So, at times we're blaming the pass protection, but when it's a clean pocket, his completion percentage is last in the NFL and his passer ratings last. And, there's, like I mentioned before, misfires, drops. And then on the outside, there's just seems to be some miscommunications at times. And look, Trent Sherfield got most of the reps during the OTA portions when Stephon Diggs wasn't there. But just his time under task with him, that just doesn't seem to be a great connection there. And I've been impressed with Shakir, and he's made some great plays on 3rd down, but it just doesn't seem like this passing game, especially without Diggs kind of being the force that he was at the beginning of the year, it just doesn't seem like it's there right now. But you have the emergence of the run game, which is great, but then when Josh only throws the ball 15 times against Dallas, only 21 times against the Chargers, your numbers aren't going to quite be there. But the concern for me is, that with a clean pocket right now, they're not executing at all.
Well, now that's a great point. And obviously, you would think Josh would hit on more of those. Should there be a point here about too that they don't have the guys separating, even as a clean pocket, they're not getting separation. They're not giving windows for Josh to throw to. How much of that is an issue?
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. They've also been inches away from taking the top off the defense to Diggs in the Chargers game and in the Patriots game. If we could complete both those balls, and those are big ifs, even if you complete one out of the 2 of them, Diggs totals look a lot better, and we might be talking differently about this passing game right now. But you miss on 2 of those, and those are inches away from being being massive stat changers when you look back
Right.
at those 2 games. I mean, the last one against the Patriots, if either Diggs flattens his route a little bit or Josh puts it more, kind of straight up the field at the goalpost, that's 88 more passing yards. Diggs goes over 100 yards, gets a touchdown, and we're probably saying, hey, the connection's back. And so it's close at times, but to me, it's a concern. And then also, when we talk about the passer rating, touchdowns play a major factor in that. When the Bills have gotten in the red zone with Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator, it's battering ram Josh Allen. He just tied Jalen Hurts, 15 rushing touchdowns on the season, ties the record for most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in a season. They're both tied at 15 right now. And so that's affecting some of that passer rating, I understand.
Let's go to the other side of the ball. Somebody asked me a great question the other day, and for me, it was a great question. It allowed me to kind of go in the way back. I'm a Bills historian, right? I grew up this team, the 80s and 90s. And the question was, is Rasul Douglas, where does he rank as far as in-season additions all time? And I had to slow down and say, look, let's remember, just so everybody's clear out there, and you might not know this, Eric, Cornelius Bennett was an in-season addition. Steve Tasker was an in-season addition. James Lofton was an in-season addition. So I don't know if I'd put him up there. Those guys helped them get to Super Bowls. But I would say in our time together, covering this team, you playing, me covering you, this regime, you and I covering this team in the media, this is probably the best in-season addition this team, this organization has made.
Yeah, I'd say so. And what a grab that was at the trade deadline. And, for Bean to be able to pull that one off, and you're getting him from the Packers who, they're they're playing for a playoff spot next
Right.
week. It wasn't like you went to, a dumpster fire of an organization, at this stage and said, "Hey, we're going to pick off one of your better players." I had heard of Rasul Douglas, but he wasn't a guy that I was saying, "Oh man, if they can find a way to swing a trade for Rasul Douglas, that's going to change the trajectory of this defense for the remainder of the season." But they found him, and gosh, I mean, he is a perfect fit in so many ways. I mean, the way those guys have been joking around with each other and the way he's meshed with Poyer and Hyde and the rest of that room. I mean, those guys truly are having a lot of fun back there and get along great. And then he's a ball hawk. It is what it is. And to be a ball hawk, you have to have a certain amount of confidence. And we talked about on the broadcast, when he had that pick six, he runs the hot route for the receiver. If Zappy pump fakes there and takes the top off the defense, there's no safety back there. It's a touchdown the
Right.
other way. Now, he understood they didn't have enough protection for a 7-man blitz, and someone's coming free. He's got to get rid of the ball very, very fast. And so he understood that by the look of, their formation. They simply didn't have enough blockers. Someone was coming free. He had to get rid of the ball. But Rasul Douglas isn't even watching the receiver on the play. He's looking straight at Bailey Zappi, and he runs the hot route for him, and it has a pick six. I mean, that's ballsy. It is, just call it what it is. On his interception that he had early in the game, and he talked about it after the game, the one he had prior that wasn't a pick six, he talked about, with motion away, they run that backside slant. Well, he has deep boundary is his responsibility shown by his initial barrel coverage. And then he sees Devontae Parker run a slant and he goes and picks it off. I mean, if that's a slant and go, it's another big play. Now he understands but that's what ball hawks do. They take
Right.
chances and they make plays like that. I mean, if Rasul Douglas ran a 4.3, he'd probably make $25 million a year. I don't know what he runs the 40 in. Now he showed some crafty moves on that pick six, but I felt like he was running in sand at times. But he's been an outstanding addition for this defense.
And just to wrap it up and go back to this particular game, looks like we don't know, no Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins. And this is a timing rhythm offense. So I don't know how many double moves he'll see this week either, right? I mean, like it seems like this is the kind of offense that if he wants to take chances, he can probably go after the ball again because that's what the Dolphins like to do. One read, see it, get it out, and go. So it's going to be interesting. But of course, if you do miss in this one, that's Tyreek Hill, and that's going to be six over your head.
Yeah, you got to be a little bit more conservative with Tyreek Hill on the edge. I mean, he could take the top off the defense. I don't know if you've been watching Hard Knocks, Sal, but it's amazing to me, and it doesn't happen all the time, but in 2 out of the last 3 games, Mike McDaniel, prior to the start of a series, predicted one-play drives. Now, he could do that all the time, and they just don't show that on TV. I understand it, but Mike McDaniel calls a play, hopes for a coverage, and if he sees it, he says, "Oh, this is a touchdown." I know it takes a good throw and a good catch to make that happen, but that's the type of speed and that's the type of ability this Miami offense has. I mean, they're as explosive as anyone in the league with their tremendous speed. We'll see if Mostert's going to play this week. He was out last week against the Ravens. You assume Waddle's going to miss again with the high ankle sprain. Tyreek Hill dinged his ankle again last week, but obviously a burner out there, and they have some
even to it. Like he hurt his left shoulder a little bit, had to leave the game.
And I think even bigger, maybe not bigger than that, but in addition to that is his thumb that he's been dealing with. I mean, he's dealing with a thumb injury as well. And so the fear, I believe, for a lot of Dolphins fans and a lot of people around the league when you look at this Dolphins offense and how they play is if they lose some of this explosiveness, is it going to be as effective? And when you have extremely fast, smaller guys all over the field, are you going to be able to hold up? They put so many resources into their skill guys. Is this offensive line good enough? And, they invested in Armstead at left tackle, but he's been dinged up ever since he got there. I've never seen 3 injuries on the injury report, and I feel like he's always got 3 injuries on there. Maybe he wears like a badge of honor and tells them to throw something else on there and, look how tough I am getting out there. But, to me, they've gotten dinged up on both sides of the football, but the fear was, all these smaller guys on the outside, smaller running backs, if they take enough shots, in Tua's got injury history. If they take enough shots, will this be able to stand? And we'll see how it shakes out. But right now, they're banged up.
Real quick, you think the Titans have a shot to beat the Jags? Last game of the year at home for them, and the Jags obviously looking to make the playoffs. Maybe same scenario we were talking about before, which is ruin a division rival's season.
I do. And, you have a young quarterback in Will Levis that's trying to be the franchise quarterback there. I don't think Vrabel's job is in jeopardy, but, Mike Vrabel, potentially coaching for his job there and the rest of that staff. But I think the quarterback's the biggest factor because he wants to go out there and prove, hey, I'm the guy for next year. And if they go out and beat the Jags in the last game of the year, that'll go a long way in aiding in them putting some confidence into Will Levis for this offseason. The Jags have looked terrible as of late. And, Trevor Lawrence should be back for this one, but is he hobbled a little bit? And yeah, I think Tennessee has a chance as well in that one.
All right, we want to thank Sports City Pizza Pub. Great wings, great pizza. Eric, I know you've been there, west side of Buffalo here, Niagara Street. They do a great job, and they're helping to bring Sal's House to everybody whenever we get a chance to do it. Really appreciate you jumping on today. I know you got a busy week. Tell everybody where they can also hear you breaking down the games and what's going on in your podcast and everything.
Yeah, so obviously the Bills radio analysts get to call the games with Sal and Chris. I have my Centered on Buffalo podcast. Bringing a guest each week, and I do some breakdowns myself. I believe we're going to repurpose this audio and put it on there as well, do some cross promotion there. And so that's been a lot of fun for me to dig into. And I figured, hey, I'm doing all these different appearances. Why don't I kind of capitalize off it as well? So that's been a ton of fun to do on the Centered on Buffalo podcast. And follow me on social media at ewood70 on X and Instagram. I think that's the first time I've ever called it X. In my life.
I sometimes say Twitter or X, but it's still twitter.com. By the way, you had Gronk on. That was a good conversation. You enjoyed that?
I did. And you never know how a guest is going to show up. Like I know if I have you come on the podcast, I know you're going to bring great energy. You're going to take it serious. You're going to have a microphone and not be in your car. And I assume that you would assume the same for me. But with guys you don't have a very close relationship with, you don't know how they're going to show up. And man, he brought the energy last week. It was a lot of fun. We had some fun talking about, current Bills player, former Bills player, who he grew up rooting for. He said, as a kid, he idolized Eric Moulds, and you see some Gronkowski, you see some Eric Moulds in Gronkowski's game over the years. And then, we broke down wing spots and blue cheese and all that. And we talked a little bit about the current state of the Patriots, but I'm not having Gronk on my podcast to break down a Bailey Zappi offense. There's some better material that I could pull from him.
You could probably have him on 20 more times and never get to everything with Rob Gronkowski. That's no doubt about that. All right, Eric, thank you. And speaking of wings, once again, Sports City Pizza Pub, Niagara Street, west side of Buffalo. Head over there. Great food, great pizza, great wings, beer, all of it on tap. Check it out. Eric, thank you so much. I'll see you in South Florida. Big Sunday night game. Safe travels there, brother.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I got a couple days of golf here coming on the front end of that one. So
nice.
Yeah, when the schedule released, I'm not going to lie, seeing and I love a Bills cold home game, bring a team to the elements. Trust me, I do. And but you give me Miami in January, you give me LA in late December. I'm locking those two in. Those were I was excited about.
Thanks a lot, buddy. We'll see you there. Safe travels.
Yeah, my pleasure, brother.